Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Time now for the week that was. Let's take a look at the top stories that made headlines across the globe this week. Now, the Governor Nyesom Wike faction of the People Democratic Party has pulled out of the campaign council of the party's presidential candidate, Atiku Abubakar. The Wike team insisted that they will not be a part of the campaign activities pending the resignation of the party's national chairman, Iyorchia Ayu. They made this resolution earlier today after a meeting held at Governor Wike's private residence in Port Harcourt, Rivers State. Arise News sister platform, This Day newspaper, reports that participants at the meeting included sitting governors, founding members of the party, former ministers, and other leaders of the party. The resolution was read by Olabode George, a former deputy national chairman of the party. Chief George said they were deeply concerned about the division in the party, despite its age-long internal mechanism designed to guarantee inclusiveness. All right, so Steve, of course, PDP, internal wranglings, here we go again.
It's a weekly dose, isn't it?
It's a weekly dose of Wike drama.
Wike and Atiku.
Wike and Atiku, yeah.
I mean, that was expected, actually. There was no surprise to it. When I saw Wike's name on the list, of the Atiku campaign presidential council, I thought, okay, let's see how this will pan out, given the fact that all his demands had not been met, especially the demand about having the chairman of the party, Iyorchia Ayu, to resign, to step down. But then what does this portend for PDP? You can see when we go into the newspaper reviews later that Wike, from what he said yesterday, is basically saying that without you concluding with me, having a deal with me, it is not likely that our party, PDP, their party, will win the election. And he's very clear about that. I think one of the leading papers today has something about the fact that without Lagos, without Kano, without Rivers, which we have always said here repeatedly, Atiku's chances are near impossible. And that's what his team are basically saying, that until you've acceded to our demands, especially about the fact that the chairman of the party has stepped down, we're not going to be with you on this. I think this will further damage the party, and especially the candidature of Atiku Abubakar, which is why the candidate of APC, the ruling party, is seizing the occasion to say that without Wike, it's obvious that, bid bye-bye to, to your bid to be the president of Nigeria. We're talking about former governors, we're talking about sitting governors, we're talking about those who hold PDP in Lagos, in terms of Chief Olabode George. We're talking about the fact that in 2019, Atiku with PDP won in Oyo and Ondo State. Today, Governor Seyi Makinde of Oyo State is part and parcel of the Wike campaign. It means that Oyo will be dicey for him if he goes ahead to ignore Wike. Ondo, that is APC, yes, PDP won in 2019, but then things have changed in Ondo with Akeredolu's popularity because of the way that he has dealt with the issues of insecurity and Amotekun. And with him being appointed as the commander, if you like, of the Southwest campaign for Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, it's unlikely that Ondo will be left to go
but Steve,
for PDP.
Why do you think it's taken this long for the PDP to cave in?
I think ego is involved.
Hubris, all of that.
Absolutely, on both parts. I think they don't want to play into the hands of somebody that you can't predict. Because if they agree that Ayu should step down, and it is only Ayu that can offer to step down. What the constitution of the party says is that until the next neck, there's really nothing that they can do. But Wike is saying, we had an agreement. You promised me, one, that I will be your running mate, and two, because you are from the north,
I would expect that you will do
you will have to step down.
In any case,
But then they don't want to play into the hands of Wike, because with a Wike, you never can tell. You wouldn't know what the next demand will be.
So you're also admitting Wike's unpredictability.
Absolutely, everybody knows that, and Atiku knows that. And I think that, with ego there and thinking that, they will also be chatting their own maps and everything, and thinking that, without Wike, maybe we can have a go at it. it will be tough, it will be difficult. Like Wike said, and like we've always said, in addition to Lagos and Rivers, the BKK states that are obviously not, wholly with Atiku, it will be tough, to be the president. And what people will say is that maybe if you had managed Wike better, you probably, because this looks like the last chance for Atiku.
It's very thin. Time is very thin.
It's very. The campaigns will start next week. Maybe when the campaign starts, this time around, it's a long one, unlike the previous one. You will have a whole 5 months, for which to campaign. Maybe if they see the first few weeks and see that it will be tough without him, maybe they might have a rethink. But then what if they say that we have alternatives to Wike, even in Rivers State? And that could be, the
magic trick.
Absolutely. Why not? They could have an alternative in Oyo and in Lagos. Already they have the candidate of the party, Jando, with them. They could have an alternative. But then how far those alternatives will go will be the issue that only Atiku will have to convince himself that this is the decision that he wants to take.
All right. Well, we have to wait and see.
We'll wait and see.
Not a lot of time, but of course.
Absolutely.
Now, the National Industrial Court has ordered Academic Staff Union of Universities to call off the ongoing strike. ASU had on February 14 declared a national strike pressing home the demands for revitalization funds for universities, renegotiating the 2009 FGN and ASU agreement, release of earned allowances for university lecturers, and deployment of the University Transparency and Accountability Solution. The situation has forced many Nigerian students to be out of school for over 7 months, prompting them to block the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway and Lagos Airport to register their displeasure. Now, of course, we spoke about this. We had comments, of course, from Raji Fashla the other day where he mentioned that you shouldn't disrupt. But, of course, they've taken it to the airports as well. What do you make of the ASU drama?
Things are developing. Things have changed. It looks like the federal government is vehement in trying to quash ASU. From what has happened with the lawsuit, ASU has, of course, appealed the judgment. But what is obvious is that it looks like government is saying that, yes, we will try and negotiate with you, but at the same time, we'll look for alternatives. One of the alternatives, one, will be to use the industrial court, which they are at it already, and possibly to find a way to deproscribe ASU, which is also on the cards. And we read about some audit query being issued about why the books of ASU has not been, open for vetting in the past 5 years, etc. All this put together is such a shame, really, because this is the 7th month and we're still at it. So if all these options were there for federal government, why were they not using the first 1 month, first, second,
first time?
First time. It's just a bad situation, frankly speaking. And we can't blame the students.
Not at all.
The nuns, who are saying that, we can't just sit down for 7 months. 7 months is just 2 months short of the whole academic session. And it looks like they have lost it. So when ASU says that, when we resume, we will combine everything, blah, blah. What sort of studies would that be?
Even that is not a good idea.
It's not ideal. Nobody says that, if you've been on leave for a certain length of time, when you resume, you pack all the work together. The reason why somebody else will take over your job when you're on leave is because they know that you can't return to come and do it. But ASU is saying that, we'll do it and everything. Frankly speaking, nobody knows what next and what could happen. Who will blink first?
Right.
They will just have to return to negotiation table. And because of, think of the student basically, and the parents who are waiting for the students at home. If ASU does not return to school, who knows whether they will be proscribed? Who knows whether the courts will force them? If they lose at the appeals, for example, who knows whether the courts will force them? And then when you force lecturers to return to classes, what sort of
situation is that in terms of the quality of the tutoring and the tutelage that the students will be receiving?
Absolutely.
It's such a disheartening situation overall.
It is.
And of course, we're going to keep talking about it until something happens.
Yeah.
But then it's just very important that something does happen.
It looks like this might drag for God knows how many weeks, how many months now that, it has ended up in the courts. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we proceed. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has pledged to bequeath to the nation a legacy of free and fair elections before the end of his second term in office next year. In his farewell speech at the United Nations General Assembly in New York, Buhari spoke about his respect for constitutional democracy. He said the escalation of tensions in the Russia-Ukraine war makes a case for nuclear disarmament. The Nigerian leader, who raised concerns over the injustice of climate change, and added that developing countries are paying the price for climate pollution.
Malignant youth. The danger of escalation of the war in Ukraine further justifies Nigeria's resolute calls for a nuclear-free world and a universal arms trade treaty, which are also necessary measures to prevent global human disasters. In this regard, we must find quick means to reach consensus on the nuclear non-proliferation treaty with related commitments by nuclear weapon states. I remain firmly convinced that the challenges that have come so sharply into focus in recent years and months emphasize the call by Nigeria and many other member states for the reform of the Security Council and other United Nations agencies. We need more effective and representative structure to meet today's demands that have since outgrown a system designed for the very different world that prevailed at its foundation in 1945. Change is long overdue. Africa and other developing nations produce only a small proportion of greenhouse gas emissions compared to industrialized economies. Yet, we are the hardest hit by the consequences of climate change, as we see in the sustained droughts in Somalia and floods of unprecedented severity in Pakistan. These and other climate-related occurrences are now sadly becoming widely commonplace in the developing world. We are, in effect, literally paying the price for policies that others pursue. This needs to change.
All right, Stephen, we were having conversations about climate change and climate justice, of course, as we had the other day. It's interesting to know that, there are certain concerns that President Muhammadu Buhari put forward. He did say that we need a more effective structural system. And of course, on this part of the world, we are suffering more from the effects of greenhouse gas emissions. What do you make of that in terms of where we are, Nigeria? Pollutant-wise?
I think that the president spoke eloquently to the world. It was a beautiful outing. And some other people might stretch the fact that it shows that he jettisoned the Queen's funeral for the UNGA thing. So he spoke brilliantly, and the issues were very clear. So on the climate change thing, I think some of his handlers might even want to mine it further, given what happened barely a week or 2 weeks ago when one of the leading candidates, the candidates of the Labour Party, a question was posed at him, I think in Atlanta or in New York, during one of his visits about what he thought about climate change and greenhouse, emissions, and he confessed that he knew next to nothing about it. He even didn't know that Nigeria was a signatory to a lot of treaties, and that Nigeria was doing a lot along that line. Having President Buhari speak directly to that issue is like a direct answer to what Peter Obi failed to do when he had the opportunity. But I think that the president spoke very well. Africa in general, contributes just a meager part of what we are talking about, but then we suffer the consequences more. And therefore, when we're discussing climate change, the West will have to look inwards and know that this is not so much about Africa, even though we're complying and we sign everything, we are carried along and we're with them, but then it is about them. It is not about paying lip service to the issue of climate change. and greenhouse gas emissions. But there are other issues that the president touched on. He spoke about his legacy and the need to bequeath free and fair elections, just like the late Yaradua, did. And I think that this will be a legacy that people will remember him by if he succeeds in doing that. He has said it even in Nigeria before he went to New York, to say that he will not tamper in any way, probably the same way that he did during the primaries,
right,
of his own party. And that's a good thing to say. And it will be a good, he should walk his talk, really, along that line. He also discussed the issue of, which other one was that? Nuclear disarmament. Yes. And the imbalance in the composition of the Security Council of the United Nations. I think from day one, from get-go, Buhari has always made a case, for that. And the Russian-Ukrainian war is another opportunity to say that, listen, if we have merchants of war benefiting, from arms dealing, from, arms sales, etc., what are we talking about? It means that we will continue to witness wars whether we like it or not. Why can't we have the superpowers commit to nuclear disarmament? Otherwise, look at what we are witnessing in Russia. Threats every now and then about the possibility of using, nuclear weapons. Buhari spoke very well.
Yes,
I commend him,
did.
and I think that the world should listen.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we want to see, for me, where I would fault it, or maybe not fault it, we'll probably push a little further. We want to see more sensitization around this issue here.
Oh, yes, especially on climate change, isn't
absolutely,
it?
Absolutely, yes. I think, we discussed that with Polly last week.
Yes.
It'll be good to hear
climate
more
justice,
of it. Climate
absolutely.
justice, yes.
Yeah.
But absolutely, he did speak quite eloquently about it. Yes. All right. From that farewell speech to a first, Kenya's new President William Ruto has called on international partners to help Africa deal with challenges bordering on drought, climate change, and worsening economic crisis, which were triggered by the COVID-19 pandemic and fueled by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. President Ruto's address to the General Assembly came just 8 days after assumption of office.
Excellent. I am grateful for the immense privilege to join your excellencies in this distinguished assembly, a privilege made possible by peaceful democratic transition following free and fair elections in Kenya on the 9th of August, 2022. Human well-being is under grave threat. The health of the planet requires urgent attention. The immense pressure exerted by conventional threats such as climate change, the global food crisis, terrorism, cybercrime, and armed conflict has been compounded by unprecedented, devastating disruptions due to COVID-19. It brought into sharp focus the global economy's two-lane highway, repressively patrolled by a rising tide of exclusionist nationalism. Building back better is the universal rallying call to incorporate lessons learned into doing more in a better way to recover from the shock. I suggest that we have a golden opportunity to faithfully adhere to this motto by augmenting it inward and indeed with an additional B, building back better from the bottom. On behalf of Kenya, therefore, I join other leaders in calling upon the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and other multilateral lenders to extend pandemic-related debt relief to the worst-hit countries, especially those affected by the devastating combination of conflict, climate change, and COVID-19. Furthermore, I urge the G20 to extend and expand the scope of the common framework to suspend or reschedule debt repayments by middle-income countries during the pandemic recovery period. The interlocking challenges of conflicts, triple planetary crisis, and the global food crisis have impeded our momentum and obstructed our focus on achieving fundamental transformations towards sustainable development. In the Horn of Africa region, severe drought and disruption of supply chains due to the COVID-19 pandemic as well as the Russia-Ukraine conflict, have left us food insecure, and consequently, we have been constrained to repurpose our strategies to prioritize drought and famine relief, insulating education and from disruption, and improving social protection and healthcare systems to secure the well-being of our people.
All right, William Ruto taking very swiftly to official duties there. I've got to love it. And of course, talking about eloquence, I think that he also stretched some very, very cogent points there.
He spoke very well after riding on the bus with other African leaders, in London. He spoke very well.
Point
in New
taken.
York. And it was his first major outing,
yes.
After the London, sober outing. And I think that, given the way that he, came into power, with all the accolades and everything, is the kind of a speech that you expect from a young, vibrant, knowledgeable, and eloquent African leader. But of course, we knew that, the whole point was going to dovetail to negotiating debt relief or cancellation or restructuring of the debt, which is not something strange. This is the staple for most African leaders anyway. President Buhari spoke to the same issue, and the reasons that they gave are very germane. COVID-19, without a doubt. I'm not so sure about the fact that maybe we were the worst hit in Africa. Luckily we were not. We somehow the predictions didn't work for Africa. But in terms of the effect on our economy, yes, they are very right. African leaders are very right that the lenders and the key European Union countries and China should look for a way to, if possible, if they can, at least restructure, isn't it, the debt. But then, how many people will totally believe some of the African leaders? I'm not talking about Ruto.
That's a valid question.
Absolutely. I'm not necessarily talking about President Buhari, but then people will say, when you make that argument, like the Namibia president, for example, said, and the Zambian president, that, without rescheduling the debt, we wouldn't have enough money, to pay salaries, we won't have enough money for development, etc. And people will argue that all the money that you have had in the past, a quantum of it, went into private pocket, for example,
right.
Were embezzled, etc. How will African leaders deal with the issues of corruption, of embezzlement, of misappropriation, which is key? Which are the things that donor agencies, donor countries, and lenders, will have to consider.
Right,
but
and that request is becoming some sort of a template now, almost as though, so this
since
is...
the Okunje-Iweala days, when we succeeded under Obasanjo, to get that. I don't see why we can't get it, but then it will have to be a lot more convincing than what they are saying. COVID-19, yes. Global inflation, yes. Russia and Ukraine, yes. But then, let us also look inwards.
Right.
The little that we have and the little that we will gain, if that happens, how are they sure, that you will make a judicious use of such funds? Those will be the concerns that we
hopefully this is going to be addressed because when this becomes, like I said, a template, and the further you go down the line, the less response you're going to receive on that. Well, that was it on the week that was. We'll take a short break now, and when we return, we shall be linking up with the Rise Abuja studios to speak with Pascal Eguim, a seasoned administrator and good governance advocate, about the flag off of political campaigns ahead of next year's elections. Stay with us.